Hello and welcome to this webinar, How Blockchain Enables the Transparent Supply Chain of the Future. Blockchain has the potential to change the world of supply chain management for good. Transparent end-to-end tracing, automated payment processes, higher data quality, and there are a lot of other promises that have created a lot of buzz around the topic. But what does reality look like? Today, I am joined by 3 industry leaders, all part of the BLOCKCHERS project, that want to share their knowledge in this panel discussion. First, I'm joined by Ricardo Rohland of Join. Ricardo is the head of the blockchain department at Join. He is an experienced technical consultant and has extensive knowledge of different industries. Furthermore, he has a high degree of innovativeness and the capabilities to engage others to develop and follow through with new ideas. Then I'm joined by Philip Kote of Datarella. Philip is a blockchain architect, an enterprise blockchain solution provider. His area of responsibility ranges from technical and non-technical concept creation to implementation and marketing of blockchain projects in various business areas. Philip is the project lead for the tokenized donation platform Smart8, which he will share more information about later on. And last but not least, Ella Cullen of MindSpider. Ella Cullen is the co-founder and the CMO of MindSpider, a blockchain protocol for supply chain due diligence. She also leads their textile initiative, Thread Counts, and we will learn more about that later on. Ella is an UNECE expert in blockchain traceability, contributing to ongoing policy and project discussions. And she is also a strong proponent of female empowerment and founded Token Women to promote more female speakers in blockchain. And to round this up, my name is Stefan Schmidt. I'll be the host for today. I work for the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center as a project manager and research fellow, and I've been heavily involved in the BLOCKCHERS project, a project by the European Commission, which has supported all 3 companies. And I would say now, without further ado, let's start into the discussion. First, I wanted to share why I think this topic is really interesting and what problems we have, for example, with supply chain transparency in a lot of different industries. And I have to look at my notes. So the first thing I came across in the past was a resource called Glimmer, which is mined and used, for example, for cosmetics or for the color in cars and stuff like that. And there's always been problems with child labor, and the companies obviously try to be compliant, not have child labor, but really getting rid of it. Having good data quality is difficult. Another case, and I don't want to call the name, but one of the big phone manufacturers had a more or less similar problem in China recently, not shedding a good light on them. And here again, how can you expect a company that probably has over 1,000 suppliers to build one product to know what exactly everyone is doing? So they just would need better data, which they don't have. This is one of the other problems. And for example, if we think of counterfeit products or of corruption, malicious use of donations, I think there's a lot of problems involved when there's a lot of parties either dealing with goods, with information, or with money, and how to ensure that we have high data integrity. And this is where blockchain often comes in. So before we start with your companies, I want to give the question to the round. How can blockchain help in these problems in supply chain management? How can blockchain help create transparency?
Sure, I mean, maybe I can get the ball rolling there. I mean, I think you touched on a number of very interesting points. And what we know of supply chains is, they're not just organizations. They're a mass of different processes, different sizes of companies, different, levels of digitalization, different degrees of software, for instance. And it's been it's incredibly difficult to get them to work together, especially when we consider that they're global and often, involving thousands of companies. So, I think blockchain in this sense is allowing us to, for the first time, get companies who don't necessarily trust each other to actually work together in a more unified fashion, and to share data along the blockchain, which is going to hopefully improve a number of processes, things like efficiencies, but also things like fighting some of the bigger issues like climate change. You know, if we think about supply chains, I don't know, like Europe, obviously it's better as the European Union to fight bigger issues rather than the fragmented, you know, countries or companies that we have today.
I agree. So you also make an interesting point when it comes to companies using a shared data platform or database, which oftentimes didn't happen in the past. So there were data silos, and making sure that these databases can communicate with each other wasn't always easy. Furthermore, what do you guys think, which industries will actually benefit from blockchain in the cases that, for example, Ella just mentioned? Where can it be used? Is there an industry that stands out?
Yeah, so one industry we are focusing is the aid industry, which is a great use case basically for supply chain tracking also, and for like tracking both like goods in the supply chain, because they have many actors which not necessarily trust each other, especially like in countries of crisis. And like you can track the goods and also the financials, the payments, the funding streams.
Yeah, and I want to add one industry we are actually working on. It's the textile and fashion industry, because I think everybody already knows that there are some great issues with corporate social responsibilities in some countries like Pakistan or India, where employees are don't having fair working conditions, and there's has already to and always has to be some kind of audit on site from the sourcing companies which are buying their goods, for example. And we know cases that if they are on site auditing their suppliers, they have the feeling that the certificate which is hanging in a frame on the wall is coming right out of the printer. It's still warm from the printer, and this is what a blockchain can solve by just giving those digital identities, those suppliers digital identities, which we can actually then attach verifications and certificates from trusted entities and trusted third parties like TÜV, for example, or something like this, to attach it to them, and then make sure that every transmitted data has an additional proof that this data comes from a certificated and a trusted company, which is holding in all CSR and quality standards and so on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I agree. I think this is something that we should talk about later on, how it creates not only trust, but how you can have these certificates, how you can make sure that people don't audit themselves. I think this is maybe one of the most important topics. And now I would ask Ella to introduce what exactly MindSpider does and what you guys are working on.
Sure, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but I'm going to use some slides.
Yeah, you have time.
I think it's nice to have a bit of a visualization of what we're up to. So, I mean, we really started MindSpider years ago with the idea of basically helping companies with compliance, you know, of making sure that they knew where their minerals were coming from and how they were sourced, and becoming compliant with, you know, the Dodd-Frank Act in America or the EU conflict mineral regulation in Europe. And since then, we've dealt with all kinds of entities within the supply chain, and we've realized that, you know, the true demand is to move from anonymous commodities, you know, so anonymous gold, anonymous cobalt, to trusted products. And that's been kind of our new goal. And alongside that, we also understand that sustainability of supply chains is really reshaping the world as we know it. You know, supply chains are the backbone of our economies, and they're also often the source of you know, numerous sustainability issues in terms of environmental and social. So you know, they're the beginning and the end of the problem. And as we saw from BlackRock here, who is one of, I think, the largest asset management companies in the world, they've basically come out and said that any company they invest in needs to have great ESG metrics and needs to know that they are operating in a sustainable fashion. So we're really seeing this ginormous shift globally towards greater sustainability. Now, I mean, I'm just using a PowerPoint that I had from before, so I won't go into too much into depth, but I mean, we know some of the opportunities and threats of not knowing what's in your supply chain or knowing what's in your supply chain. And obviously also being able to comply with regulations. But the reality at the moment is just that, you know, responsibility is pure cost. So if you're a mine or a smelter and you've got a great efforts to be, you know, socially responsible, environmentally friendly, most likely you can't communicate that to your downstream customers. So for them, it's just something that they want to do as a company, but they're not really receiving any premiums or any benefits from it. They're still producing commodities. And so we believe in this in a future where no mineral is sold anonymously anymore. And how are we going about this? Well, we have produced a blockchain certificate system that basically we create a digital certificate that travels alongside any mineral shipment. So by the time it reaches the end manufacturer, obviously you have this chain of custody, this complete overview of where your minerals came from and how they were produced at every stage of the supply chain. Now, in recent years, we've obviously also moved a bit further away from a linear approach because, I mean, supply chains are a network. So rather than just starting at the mine and tracking to the end manufacturer, now we can start at any point in the supply chain and we can work backwards and forwards and side to side and basically just capture any information that we have about your supply chain and basically start linking up the points one by one to get a better and more complete picture of what's going on. No, so now with blockchain technology, we have, you know, trusted data tied to these companies. So sustainability has moved from being a cost of, you know, like it becomes a cost of simply doing business. It's an accepted cost of doing business rather than something that only exceptional companies actually carry out or do. Now, how does blockchain help all of this? I'm sure we'll dive more in depth into the benefits of blockchain soon. But of course, like for us, I mean, it's very flexible as to what we want to capture. It's secure. And I mean, the data is owned by, you know, the company who's using our system, so not by us. And I think that's obviously a revelation in supply chain management. And we have layered data. Now, I'll just brush over this very quickly because I know it's a little bit complex. But you have this, I mean, we're a public protocol and you have this trade-off between what data should be shared publicly. And obviously within supply chains, there's a lot of business and competitive data that companies don't want to share publicly. So what we've done is split our data into 3 layers. So you have a private layer, which you just share with your immediate customer. So, you know, this is things like invoices that you don't want anyone else in the supply chain to see. Then you have a transparency layer, which is visible to everyone in the supply chain. And finally, you have a public layer, which is obviously visible to anyone who wants to access the blockchain. And that's, you know, that might include like certifications, basically, so you can ensure that this company isn't actually greenwashing and you can check that they're carrying out the due diligence that they say they are. So we have actually more projects than this on the go at the moment. We have, obviously we've done lead traceability with Volkswagen, where we tracked we identified around 1,000 of their supply chain participants. We did a large scale, you know, consortium project with Google, Cisco, Volkswagen and Minsur. And that was tracking tin from Peru, from Minsur, which is one of these mines that I mentioned before, an incredibly, you know, top-notch mine in terms of health and safety, who can now communicate these sustainability efforts downstream to their end customers. We've also recently launched a project with Luna Smelter in Rwanda. So I was there last month helping to, you know, set up everything, and they're an incredible smelter. They really want to be a leader in the Rwandan market and in the Great Lakes region in Africa. And for, you know, we'll track tin for them as well. And obviously we also have the Thread Counts project, which we came second place in BLOCKCHERS and had a very enjoyable program to basically boost that project from ideation up to the point where I flew to Turkey also a couple of months ago. And we started identifying or supply chain mapping the entities and understanding, you know, what kind of data we can track and how we can basically track organic cotton until the final product, which in this case is a range of luxury sustainable towels. So busy days at MindSpider, as you can see. And this is our lovely little team and advisors. And I won't go into all source too much, but there you have our latest project. This is the one that we're working on in Rwanda, basically to help companies become more compliant with the EU regulation that I mentioned. So wonderful. I hope that was under 5 minutes or close to, but there we go. I'll stop sharing and give the stage back to someone else.
Yeah, I would say it was close to, and it was really interesting. And I'm looking forward to talk about especially certificates and the idea of supply chains as a network, and going forwards and backwards and sidewards a little later on. And I would say next off is Philip of Datarella.
Sure. Let me share also my screen.
Sure.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll just go in presentation mode. Okay, so hi, I'm Philip, and I'm going to present you our Smart Aid project here at Datarella. So first of all, who we are. Datarella, as I said, is building the enterprise blockchain, and we're active in different sectors, for example, mobility, supply chain, with our track and trust product, identity, we have a decentralized key recovery project, and finance with Smart Aid and building blocks. So about our team, so the conceptual work is done here in Munich, and the development is based in Poland, Gdansk. Here's one of our most famous projects called Building Blocks by the World Food Programme, and it supports over 800,000 refugees in 3 countries and saves the World Food Programme over $8 million a year since it was deployed. And it's basically a cashless voucher system. So the refugees, they get cash vouchers and they can just pay in the supermarket with an iris scan. And yes, so our other project is, for example, our blockchain wallets, mobile wallets, where you can send and receive cryptocurrencies and private tokens. Okay, about Smart Aid. So Smart is our next generation marketing, funding, and reporting tool for non-profit organizations. And with blockchain technology, we are introducing a new era of transparency, efficiency, and effectivity to the aid industry. So kind of mission statement. So let's have a look at the problem. As you can see here, we just try to picture a traditional system where you have donors and they fund they fund like an organization, and in the end, they don't know what happens with the money, you know? There's this cloud, and on the other side, also the beneficiaries, they need to wait until they receive the money, until the organization acts and until something happens. So there are some problems in the system, and that's why we created Smart Aid. And with Smart Aid, we're offering an effortless donation experience, an engaging donation experience, and a transparent donation experience. So let me explain how it works. So that's our web app. It's like under smartaid.digital, you can visit it. So we have some projects up there, and you can just like choose a project you like and donate via PayPal or credit card. And then, like the most donation platforms, that would then the end of the donations, but not with Smart Aid. So it's basically the beginning of our process, because we created a token representative of your donation on our blockchain. And you will get this tracking QR code on tracking ID, which allows then to follow the journey of the donation. You can share it with your friends to engage. And here I have like a overview of how our system works. So the payment at the moment is done by PayPal, processed by PayPal, and goes directly to the organization, like the U Foundation. And here comes the Smart Aid layer. So what we do is we create an ERC20 contract for each donation, which allows and mint tokens according, so matching to the amount which you donate. This allows then each individual donor to follow his or her individual donation. So the next step, for example, U Foundation, one of our partners who was there since the beginning with us, they received then the donation tokens. And with our new feature we are building at the moment, they can allocate them to different projects, different budgets. And so the donor will see them like, okay, like, let's say like 10% was used for analyzing the place of the fountain, 80% was using for drilling the fountain, 10% was used for bank transaction cost, and this and that. And that's basically our system. And now I show you some future plans with Smart Aid, where we are heading. So that's another project of us, the Urban Joe, which is a partner, which is run by Saqib Shaikh. And we worked with Saqib already in another project. It's called the R-Coin. And they used our wallet, the R wallet, which you see here on the right. It was before COVID times, so people could meet up in person and do voluntary work, and they earned this R coins. So like the refugees here, they're not allowed to work legally. So that's why they incentivize them with these R coins to do voluntary work, to learn, to like attend to seminars. And the refugees could then spend the R coins for gift vouchers or insurance and this kind of stuff. So we are already in contact with Sakib and planning after the whole COVID situation maybe cool down a little bit to extend this functionality and connect it with Smart Aid. So how it would look like. He's running this urban farm and it would enable us or donors to donate directly their donation tokens to people in need, to refugees, and they could redeem it then at the farm against fresh produce. And the farm could cash in then the tokens for fiat currency over PayPal. And then we're like imagining to grow the system, and, you know, like maybe the refugees or people in need could redeem the donation tokens from the donor directly to school and get like education, and maybe people can work at the farm and earn other coins. So create kind of a whole economy based on this donation tokens. And now you might ask yourself, why using this kind of community currencies or donation tokens instead of just giving them fiat money? So yeah, one point for sure is they probably cannot open a PayPal or don't have credit cards or bank accounts to send them money. That's easy. But I think the way more important factor is that community currencies, as shown by Aggressive Economics in Kenya, they stay in the community because they cannot leave, because you can just spend them locally, which increases their impact. And it makes also really easy to measure the impact in the end. Yes, that's where we're heading. And that's my little presentation about Smart Aid and Data Radar. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome, Philip. Thank you very much. I think it's also really interesting to see the infrastructure that you have built and the really transparency on the impact of the money. And I think this is also something we can talk about later.
Sure, yeah.
If you could stop sharing so that so that Ricardo can share his screen.
Yep, here we go.
Oh, very good. So yeah, thank you for having me here today, and I'd like to present my screen. So yeah, I hope I will not blow the time, so I will go briefly over some slides. This is our beautiful team I'm starting with. Those are our five locations. If you are visiting us, you can have a sightseeing tour connected to the appointment. But I want to start directly into some principles and concepts, which I'm heading over in a brief way. We use for our blockchain use cases mostly the verified digital identity, which can be organizations, persons, things, and all these stuff with immutable documentation and verified interactions. But I just showing this as to refer to it later if there is any need. Normally we approach our use cases with smart contracting to exchange data in a trustful way. We do it middleman free because of blockchain and in an encrypted way. We got entry permissioning and integrated business logics and depths, so decentralized applications. But I want to go briefly over it. And in the BLOCKCHERS case, with our partner Pari, which are from the or who is from the industrial scale industry, we have to transfer trusted and transparent data to unknown people and unknown customers. So this approach would not work. So we looked for a solution which then shows that trustful data exchange off-chain is possible with verifiable credentials and verifiable presentations and zero-knowledge proofs. Both, all three are pretty powerful, especially when it comes to supply chains. But not to be too technical, I want to directly start into the use case. So the Pari use case was all about the industrial scale of the future, like we named it. It's all about tamper-proof and trustworthy weighing results, which are then stored on the blockchain to make it transparent. when we started the program, we found ourselves to this situation. The Perry industry or the weighing industry looks mostly like this, that you have a road vehicle scale which is attached to a weighing electronic, and the road vehicle scale is issuing two weighing results, one of the truck without any cargo, and then the filled truck with any bulk cargo like sand or gravel or something like this, and then this is transferred to a weighing electronic, and until this point the German calibration office, which is a regulatory instance, is checking that all this thing is calibrated and fine. But connected to this weighing electronic, there's a scale PC where manipulation can happen, and that's why many customers don't trust their invoices they are getting, because it's hard to measure if there are 20 tons or 22 tons of gravel on the truck which are invoiced to me, and if I don't trust this result, I have to go through for the owner of the scale a costly clearing process, because he has to interrupt and the whole weighing process, and have to physically go with me to the weighing electronic to check if the weighing result on my invoice is actually the same like on the weighing electronics. So we set our goal to switch this schema to something like this. We have the road vehicle scale then directly attached to a smart agent, or to a weighing electronic which is actually extended by a smart agent, which is then writing trusted data to the blockchain. In our case, it's via the network. It's an enterprise-ready Ethereum-based blockchain as a service provider ecosystem, which is then used for our use case and connected to the Perry systems. Our goal is then to make with this schema the weighing result much more trustworthy and transparent, to eliminate all the clearing process costs for the partners which are not betraying their customers and tricking them. And we want to also create reusable weighing results for subsequent partners. It's kind of an supply chain paradigm, if you want to extend it to this. And I will show you now how we did it. We had first created a digital identity for each calibrated scale, which is the reference on the blockchain for a physical machine in this case. Then this calibrated scale will issue verifiable verifiable credentials at first for each weighing result, one with the empty truck and one with the filled truck, and the delta of both weighing results is then the amount which is invoiced to the customer. This is those two verifiable credentials are then transferred to the trusted third party, which is in this case is Pari. And Pari is connecting those two verifiable credentials to a verifiable presentation and writing it to the blockchain, and giving the scale owner, which is likes to invoice the weighing result to its customers, is giving a QR code, which is a reference to the blockchain verifiable presentation, and giving them over the payload which they need for their processes, for example, the invoice creation. The next step is that the invoice is created for the customer, and this invoice is now extended through a QR code, which is the reference to the blockchain. And now comes the new groundbreaking solution from our side, so that I have to choose another color. That means the customer is now able and capable of scanning in those QR codes with a small decentralized app, proving that the invoiced amount of gravel, for example, he received is actually the one which was really weighed through the scale. And I want to show it you in a brief way with a recording we made. So here you can see a decentralized application. My colleague is now choosing a verifiable presentation as a QR code, which is then normally printed on the invoice. If you are in a mobile context and using a smartphone, you are able to simply open the app in the browser and then click on the camera button to simply scan the QR code in. Then this QR code will get resolved. And yeah, then you normally should see that your weighing results are actually valid. And you see the weighing result 1 is in this case 30 kilograms. The weighing result 2 is in this case it's only test data 100 kilograms. So you should not have been invoiced more than 70 kilograms. Yeah, which you are now yeah, paying to the scale owner or the plant owner of the sand or gravel plant. Yeah, and that's the case Parry brought to us. We developed the smart agent, which is attached on each scale and inside of the Parry cloud system. But yeah, I will go through it because of the time. And yeah, if you are interested in any of those use cases on our services, just feel free to contact me anytime. And yeah, I'm looking forward for the further discussion and with the panelists in this webinar. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ricardo. Now we are back to the full screen. And I think you guys more or less all managed to stay within this 5-minute frame. But I have to say this is great context for what we are talking about next. And so the first question I really want to give to all of you, and I think you can all answer it for your respective project as well, is off-chain data. So I think we will all agree that data that is produced on the blockchain itself is pretty reliable, has high data integrity. But as you said in your last presentation as well, Ricardo, making sure that the data that is recorded off-chain and then delivered onto the blockchain or recorded on the blockchain is reliable. And Ella talked about responsibility, sustainability, or in the end, finally, enabling the customer or people to make informed decisions because they can follow the supply chain, they can follow the product from the resources to the smartphone or whatever they hold. How do we make sure that along these supply chains and the data is really reliable? And maybe we can start with you, Ella.
Sure. So it's something we've given a lot of thought to over the years. And I mean, it is, you know, the question I get asked the most, you know, how do we connect this physical and digital world? At the moment we use QR codes, but I think there is like a plethora of different options and they depend on, often on your budget, it depends on what you're tracking, and it depends on the granularity of the data that you need as well. So if we want to focus on minerals for a second, for instance, there are incredible things like Stardust is a solution that some friends of ours basically, and this is basic and like an isotope, like a chemical compound or concoction, I guess, that you sprinkle in a metal and it will still be, even though the metal will be smelted and made into, you know, different, you know, ingots and so forth, it will still be present in the final product. So you can, you know, validate the authenticity of the product from start to finish, no matter its transformation along the supply chain. But for instance, if you want to know that that metal came from a specific mine and wasn't, you know, at some point switched with another metal that came from a conflict mine across the border, you might want to use, you know, tracking or like some kind of geotagging, NFID tags or something. So as I said, like it depends really on what your goal is and how granular you want this data to be. And I think in textiles, there's possibly even more options. So what we're looking into for thread counts in Turkey now is things like synthetic DNA. And also actually Stardust also works with textiles. You can also sprinkle this this dust in textiles and still have it visible in the final product. And I mean, in this case, it's interesting because organic cotton is better than conventional cotton and that it doesn't use GMO seeds, it doesn't use pesticides and so forth. So in this case, a QR code isn't enough. You know, you want to make sure that this organic cotton has been kept separate throughout the processing from the conventional cotton. So yeah, no, it's definitely, it's an evolution. And I'd say that in the last year, for instance, we've just seen an explosion of various identifiers and markers that help us to basically know that the product is authentic and what it says it is from start to finish.
Okay, awesome. So now I understand. I actually didn't know most of this, so really insightful. How you make sure you are having the same product or same resources over the supply chain. Maybe Ricardo, you can give some more insights into how you essentially make sure that, or I mean, you talked about it, how the scales are really trustworthy, the data that comes from it, what solution you had there. And what I was wondering also for your case, Ella, is I would imagine a lot of that has been done in the past. So where's really the difference? What do you different, and how is this maybe only enabled through blockchain that, you know, and now we have a higher level of data integrity, data quality, and the thing you're doing is finally now working?
Should I
I'll
start?
let Ricardo go first. Yeah.
Okay, that was the question actually. Okay, thank you. Yeah, related to our use case, to get more data in integrity and the correct data to the blockchain, I think it's essential to connect the Oracle or the small API server, or like we call it smart agent, which is a part of the process, pretty near to the process or to the point where the data is actually created. So in our case, we try to attach it in a regulated, calibrated environment, like the scale and the weighing electronics, and make it not possible to technically interrupt in this process, or have some kind of manipulation through the data getting written to the blockchain or by a third-party entity in this case. And yeah, maybe you should focus on letting data which may be manipulated, or where the creator of the data has the how can I say, has some kind of advantage. If he manipulates the data, then this data should not be written by the owner or creator of the data himself, but maybe from a trusted third party which has no interest in manipulating any of this data, to get this trust and to get this oracle, which is then checking up the whole supply chain, or you have to interrupt supply chains at specific points where kind of an auditor or oracle is joining in to approve what has happened till this point, and like a laboratory for checking the cotton, for example, or something like this, to check up the manipulation and realize that there's something is wrong.
Okay, so what I hear, we need auditors along the supply chain. Ella, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to mirror Ricardo and say that we also work with obviously third-party auditors, and they can enter the system and verify that a certificate, or that a standard, whatever that a company's worked with, like TÜV or like SGS, is actually valid and correct and issued by that company. So that that kind of third-party verification is very important. I think also the improvements in automation are really key to making this bridge a little less shaky between the digital and the physical world. So, I mean, a lot of the companies where I go to start setting up our systems, they work purely with paper. They, have no digitalization of their processes. And so it's kind of like that is the first step, to digitalize these processes. And then as we start to include more IoT, more of these unique markers to basically connect these two worlds, eventually we'll get to a point where the mineral will be taken out of the ground and will be kind of automatically tracked the entire way. Of course, this is, my dream for the next 5 or 10 years, and we're far away from that point at the moment. It's very much done manually at this point, but I hope that will begin to reduce the human error, and also obviously any false claims that are being entered into the blockchain at this point.
Okay, thank you. Now, Philip, I think with your Smart 8 project and also the others that you have mentioned, you might have a different scope, but maybe also even a broader scope when we look at your ecosystem. So I'm wondering, or First, let me start differently. I like the idea because especially when it comes to donations, a lot of money is lost on the way, and it's really not transparent how much goes into marketing. Is the money that lands in these countries really used for the purpose you donated? And so you want to give more transparency there. And I'm also wondering, how do you really ensure that you said the token goes to, for example, to one organization and is used on certain projects? How do you guys ensure that this actually happens?
Yeah, so as we all know, the last mile problem is the biggest one, and we need to definitely solve. We have different approaches here, actually. So on the one side, we work with blog posts, like really traditional, you know. So if they say they will build a fountain in somewhere in Africa, and they for sure they can allocate the tokens into budgets and inform the donors that they do this. But in the end, they also, like the organization uploads a report with photos and images. It's like really a traditional way of reporting. That's one thing. And I think it will get easier the more, so let's start like Smarted is really young. So we started mid of last year. And at the moment we're using these tokens as kind of a digital twin representing your donation. And you can follow the digital twin, but that's absolutely true. There is room still to fraud. But when we move more and more to use this digital representation as a medium of exchange, and let it like move along the stakeholders, that'll make it, the system in general more safe. So that's, I think, where we will go in the next step with allowing people to use your donation token as a medium of exchange to get, for example, schooling, education, or food. Then they can upload a picture together when they paid and use the transaction recorded on the blockchain and the picture, and you're pretty sure, or you can be pretty sure that your donation was indeed used for this, for food or for education.
I see. So in the future, you will need a lot of people or a maybe third-party firm to verify these pictures. I was also wondering, and I think this is a problem that Ella mentioned, that most likely most of the people that receive your tokens and might exchange it for something, they are behind in digitalization, let's say, because I was wondering if you ever considered purposing tokens only to be used for certain things. So is this an idea that you have, that in the future maybe a certain type of token can only be used for educational supplies or for food or stuff like that? And is this even possible? Or
there is definitely room to explore. I would not definitely limit the use of the token so much, because, you know, like that's dead actually of any community currency if you cannot spend it for what you need it for, and then it also defeats the purpose. So, and there should be also always an exit. So if you need to have fiat currency to buy gas and there's no gas offered for community currencies, there should be a way to exchange your community currency which you earned or received as a donation into fiat, like to do at grassroots. But yeah, it's a thing which we still need to explore.
okay, true. I agree. I haven't thought of that way. So I was also really interested, Ella, how does, when you have these certificates, you track a product from its inception to the, let's say, finished towel or wherever the lead or iron or tin goes into? How do companies use that at the moment, and how can also people like me, if I were to buy the towel, how would that look like for me? How do I get this transparency to make a decision?
Sure. So I think the kind of the shift that I mentioned was that we saw that, you know, supply chains aren't linear, you know, they work in a network fashion. And we also moved more from focusing on tracking the shipments. I mean, we can still do that, but to basically gathering data points about the entities in the supply chain, because we really need to know not whether, you know, this shipment of towels is, you know, CO2 positive or negative or whatever, even though that's very interesting. But we need to know, you know, at the weaver were there human rights abuses. So the entity data actually became highly important. And now we basically, you know, obviously still track shipments, but we allow entities to have an account and to capture and share information about their business practices. How you as a consumer can access this? Well, so ThreadCount's app, our textile app, is our first kind of customer-facing app. And that means that consumers can basically scan a QR code, which will hopefully be sewn into their towel. And then they can access the full overview, what we call the product passport, which gives them all the information they need about their towel, you know, so where it came from, how it was produced. Also, I mean, I'm working with T-shirt Collective, the company, on recycling options, because of course we want this to be circular at some point, and we want people to know that when their towel reaches the end of its useful life, they can scan it and say, okay, what do I do with my towel now? Where do I you know, put it in a recycling bin? Can I give it to a shop? So there's a whole, you know, range of things that we're considering to include in this product passport. But no, it's really exciting to finally be reaching consumers, because I think they care more about textiles and food products than perhaps at the moment the minerals that go into their cars. But I hope one day that, you know, we'll have this app and we'll be able to scan anything in our life and also kind of have a, you know, overview of everything that we consume and where it came from and, you know, its carbon footprint and impact on the environment and so forth.
I agree. And with this, I want to ask you guys where you see, as you all work in this supply chain industry, let's say, where you see blockchain and supply chain management at the moment, the adoption from the industry. So what would be your status quo that you can see at the moment, and what are potentially maybe hurdles for broader adoption, for more innovation? Why don't we start with you, Ricardo?
Okay. Yeah, I think at the moment, yeah, most of the companies working in or having a big and heterogeneous supply chains are still at the sideline, waiting that someone is adopting the technology and another one is adopting a tool, so the first one doesn't look so crazy. And yeah, but I think they mostly have the point that they think they have to implement the solutions by themselves. So it must be convenient and easy to use and just like a service to subscribe to. And I want to yeah, make my supply chain. I want it to make it transparent, and I want to just subscribe to a service. And this is mostly the thing which is making it hard for companies to adopt to the technology. And yeah, sometimes there are also yeah, regulatory hurdles that yeah, when it comes to GDPR or and yeah, the understanding of the workwise of blockchain, because some still think or some need to realize that it's okay to transfer data through the blockchain without exposing their subsequent partners, because they do not want to get kicked out of a supply chain as an intermediary who's yeah, and exposing their own supply chain, which is an yeah, kind of yeah, what can I say it? It's trusted. It's kind of an asset for a company to have a great and powerful supply chain, and nobody wants to expose this to another one. And those hurdles must go out of the heads of the companies.
So basically, basically you're saying that or most of the problems you mentioned are more in the heads of the companies than they are really existing.
Yes, yeah, because of the understanding of the technology and the workwise, and yeah, because yeah, and they have to get something handy and convenient to use. Like everyone uses software without knowing how the protocols behind it work, but they trust in it that nobody else is reading their data, and this trust is established by the blockchain, and that yeah, it's like an educational thing, and yeah, that's it.
Ella, you wanted to add something?
No, I was just going to completely agree with Ricardo again. And no, I think it is really just striking a balance between educating people about the benefits of blockchain, and all of our partners really are blockchain champions. You don't have to explain to them why it's a great technology. And I think that has to be kind of a given working with clients, but of course we have to help them in understanding that. And on the other hand, we also have to move past the point of just talking about blockchain and move on to the value that we're delivering. And I loved in Philip's presentation, you had like 8 million saved in revenue. We need business cases now. We need to go to clients and say, if you're worried about efficiencies, we can save you 8 million in revenue, rather than say, okay, your data is going to be immutable. Like, we need to kind of move past the amazing but just general characteristics of blockchain, or we need to educate them on them first and then prove a real business case for these supply chain management systems.
Yeah, so switch the narrative in this, yes, yeah, in the money perspective budget.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So I think the biggest hurdle for blockchain in supply chain is definitely the sheer number of stakeholders in the blockchain and in the supply chain, sorry. Because if you don't have no one at the top saying like, you need to use the system now, to all the downstream suppliers, it will be really hard that all the suppliers adapt to the same system and just start using it. So it's one of the problems we faced in our Track and Trust humanitarian supply chain tracking tool. For example, so if not the humanitarian organization itself says like, okay, we not make business with you anymore if you don't use this tracking tool, then it's really hard to onboard all the suppliers.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a huge amount of complexity, and of course you have I don't know, anywhere between 3 to 20 tiers of a supply chain, and they all have different needs and different wants, and it is incredibly important to get as many as possible on board. But of course that's a big struggle as well, and half of the work is supply chain mapping and understanding who's in the supply chain before you're even implementing any kind of blockchain technology.
Okay, I understand. So the complexity is pretty big, but what you mentioned as well, Ella, there's more than just transparency to it. There's a lot of potential for automation, for automated payments, invoicing, maybe factoring, stuff like that, better data for accounting and controlling and all that stuff. But I always had the feeling that a lot of these benefits that I just mentioned are linked to actual payments. So I'm wondering, for you, Philip, I know with the tokens you have implemented, there's some kind of monetary flow, and I can use the tokens to redeem the money from PayPal or somewhere else. But for MindSpider and the solution of Join, I'm wondering, do you have payments integrated into your solution, or is this a totally different topic?
So it's something that's evolved again over time for us. We started with the idea, we're decentralized, so we started with the idea of a token and rewarding, artisanal miners in Africa, and something along the lines of what Philip actually does much better than we ever did. But we came to the conclusion that people actually weren't that interested in holding tokens, for the benefits that we provide as MindSpider. They were more interested in the clarity of the documentation and trusting in the certification. So at the moment, we don't track monetary flows. Maybe that will be the case in the future, but we just realized that, yeah, people, big companies don't necessarily want to hold tokens at this moment. And we had other benefits that were more interesting. But I was actually interested that Philip, they used PayPal to, I'd be interested to hear why.
It's actually a really funny story. So we started out with Wirecard. Probably you're familiar with this company. And so we're working together with their innovation labs in creating a corporate social responsibility solution for them. And they thought like a donation platform, like blockchain-based, would be really exciting. And they had also a bank, and it would be the perfect partner for international fiat money transfer in case. But then shortly, really shortly before our launch, Wirecard dropped out for obvious reason. So we did it alone. And since we said, okay, we want to do like the middle way, we don't want to go like full crypto to like, because you then narrow down the target group a lot to just people who are familiar to use crypto, like DAI or stable coins or crypto in general. So we said like, we want to bridge between like the mainstream world and the crypto world. So that's why we just implemented really quick PayPal. And PayPal had advantage so that like for the moment being that any organization just on board could easily create a PayPal account and we can transfer the fiat money to their PayPal account.
Okay, interesting. No, it's
Yeah,
really interesting. So ease of onboarding kind of and use. Okay.
Yeah, it was more like a last minute solution because our payment provider just failed. And right now we're looking into other solutions because, like, for example, XDAI, so it's like a sidechain of Ethereum using DAI. It's like a stable coin, US dollar patched. And it would be like then even cheaper, you don't lose any money to pay PayPal in the end.
I like the concept of Philip with the hybrid thing with the coins on the one side, but the payment gateway through an established service. So if it comes to payment at our solution, I think blockchain may just be the agreed way of working together, and if there's some smart contract, for example, saying you have an obligation paying some amount of money because you received a specific good, and this is approved, then every partner should agree that this obligation has to be resolved. And I think in this way it's okay to use blockchain for payments, because otherwise, as far as I know, the BaFin and other regulatory instances may get stressful with you to issuing money on some distributed ledger. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was asking to some degree, but I think the solutions that you have presented are really interesting. I've been asking to some degree because I hope that the digital euro, should it come, but I think the ECB just at least sent really positive signals some days ago that this might make payments on a blockchain comparably easy, because we all know nobody or no company wants to pay in Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? So XDAI might be a great solution, a stable coin, but in Europe it might give some or have some regulatory implications. We will learn about that. But so I was really wondering how you guys approach payments. But what I really find fascinating as well is that companies might not even be interested in the payments first or the automation potential, but really in the data integrity and the transparency. And I think this is a great use case on its own. So we are almost out of time. I can say for myself, it was really educational for me. What I would like you to do is really shout out, what do you think? What does the future look like? What are you excited for, especially in your company? And also, why do you think is what you do really important or matters? And maybe we start with the same round as the introduction. So Ella, you go first.
Sure. I mean, I'll just squish those three all together and say that I'm super excited about greater transparency in supply chains that can actually lead us to have more sustainable business systems and have more accountability at every level of the supply chain and start creating the changes that we need in the world right now. And obviously, we hope to do that with minerals and with textiles for Mine Spider and Thread Counts.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Next. Yeah. Yes, I'm really excited about seeing how smart it is going to evolve, to be honest. Especially, I'm super excited about community currencies because I see a huge advantage if the money stays in the community and circulates in the community, and to build like sustainable businesses within the community, to make more money, and just like to help people in need to build up businesses and to grow. And I think it's super exciting. And in terms of blockchain, I'm kind of excited about what you can do with automation. Like, for example, this autonomous agents, for example, which can then act on behalf of users. I think that's super, like the combination of AI and blockchain is super interesting and super exciting.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Ricardo.
I totally agree to Philip and Ella. And want to add, because yeah, we all know about many regulations and when it comes to blockchain and when it comes to different industries. So many of these industries and yeah, supply chain running companies have those transparency and revision safety requests because of the regulatory yeah, instances. And what my wish for the future would be that those regulatory yeah, instances are creating some kind of patterns to give to the industries which are getting regulated, which are running compliant by design, and make it easier for those companies, yeah, getting those regulations bringing to the actual reality, without each one is researching and how to cope with those regulations. And I think this well, yeah, destroys a lot of power in industries. So I think if you have something compliant by design handed with the new regulation to the whole industry, maybe a huge case. And those yeah, those patterns should, in my opinion, be directly yeah, transferred to the industries on blockchain.
Then I want to say thank you very much to Ella, Philip, and Ricardo for joining the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. Really interesting webinar. We will upload it afterwards, and also to the people viewing, we will send more information on how you can reach these guys, where you find more information. And I think this is really important to stay in a exchange of knowledge and thoughts here to bring these ideas to life and make them even bigger. I think it's really exciting, and I really hope I get to talk to you soon in the future. So thank you very much and have a great day.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you.
See you soon. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.